Hello class, my name is Tanika Nestor and I'll be presenting the theories of development in the psychosocial perspective. Alrighty, so prior to the Industrial Revolution, there was a lack of humane concern for children and child development. So as you can see here on my psychologist Venn diagram, there are two theorists, John Locke and Jean-Jacques Rousseau. John Locke, he thought of the mechanistic perspective when it came to children, and he believed that children were neutral blank states and that they function like machines. Whereas Jean-Jacques, he believed in the organismic worldview where children are good and they function like organisms. They both actually were concerned with the child rearing and education. Sigmund Freud has changed revolution thinking about human development. What he did was he simultaneously included the human mind and its internal operations, and he related them to human behavior. So he was known more so for his psychosocial stages. And from Freud came Erikson, and this is where the idea of the psychoanalytic theories came about. And the concept for this is that it's the mental and emotional processes that shape human personalities. Now, what Erikson did, he developed stages where it started off from infancy all the way to elderly. So it was the entire human age. Um, he, I'm sorry. As far as the psychological or the social part aspect of this, if you look at this stage right here, the intimacy versus isolation, this right here where my arrow's at, it say your individual or a parent's personality doesn't necessarily fit them and it's not appropriate at that certain age, it may affect how a person, interacts with like another person. Versus the sociological, which is your environment. If a person is looking for love in New York and a person looking for love in Georgia, what I believe to be true is that New York is more fast-paced. The population may occur. There may be more people in Georgia or more people in New York, vice versa. But being that Georgia is a lot of slower pace, your interaction with people or the person that you may meet at that certain stage, it's a lot slow paced, so that means, you may have a conversation with that person. Whereas in New York, everybody's fast paced. It's just like you may meet the love of your life and just like pass by them. Well, that would be the environmental piece about it. Some other theories for the psychoanalytical is Gilligan. Gilligan, she focused on the morality piece, but what she did was just focus it on the women's perspective. And stage 2 says morality of care, right here. And society teaches us to be nurturing, as far as women. Society teaches us to be nurturing, and there are some women, their personalities may or may not, allow them to be nurturing. Maybe they had a past experience and they don't know how to get past this stage because of their past experience with their environment. Next, we're also going to look at the behavioral theory, which is also another stage of development. And the concept for this is that it's concerned with the observable behavior of people and what they might actually do or what they might actually say. Now, this is one of the most famous experiments that happened, and it was Pavlov who came up with the classical condition. And it was with the neutral stimulus bell, where the bell rang and the dog was supposed to create salvation, but he didn't. But it wasn't until the association with the bell and the food came about that the dog realized that there was food attached to the sound. So with that, every time the bell rang, the dog got hungry or started salvation. And associating this with society, if you live in an urban neighborhood and you always are listening to sirens and police sirens, that may be the neutral stimulus, like the bell in Pavlov's experiment. And the response to that may be fear, or maybe looking around afraid because something may be going on in your particular neighborhood. Now, an unconditional stimulus, which is the food here, you can probably associate that with maybe gunshots. So every time you hear sirens in your neighborhood, the bell per se, you may think that someone is getting shot or something's happening in your neighborhood, and then that would create fear. And as far as the psycho piece, a schizophrenia individual may hear voices in their heads, and that may trigger a certain activity, whether it's good or bad. Um, some other theorists that are behavior are Watson and Skinner, and they were more so on the operant conditioning instead of classical, and that's more so focused on imitation. Humanistic theory is another stage of development, and the concept for this is actively intervene in the course of events to control their destinies and shape their worlds around them. Now, this one's pretty simple. It's pretty much the stages of hierarchy of needs. A lot of social workers use this in their careers. First things first, if you look at the bottom here, what a person needs for sure is the psychological. You need food and water and a place to sleep in order to survive. So an individual in their environment may or may not their environment may not allow them to meet these needs. They may be poor, they may be sick, they may not afford a place to sleep, this, that, and the third, and this also affects development. Like if a person doesn't have food or water, that affects their development. And, in third world countries, they don't have food there. A lot of people are starving in third world countries, and their development there is affecting it, and it's because of the environment that they do not have these certain needs met. The ecological theory concept for this is that it shows the 4 levels of environmental influences. Now, with the ecological, what you can see here, I picked this diagram because it pertains to the particular student. Now, these are things that are in the micro system. All of these things that are around us, like our peers, courses, advisors, etc., etc. This is the individual piece. And then you have the meso system, which is between the exo, which is the outside, and the micro, which is the inside, but it kind of travels in between. And the exo system, it shows you about everything else that we as students are enduring. And then the macro system is even further outside, with the state agencies and everything that is around us. If one thing is affected, it will affect another system, and then it will eventually affect us personally, the student. So this is just a diagram that shows how everything should be on one accord. And then you have the cognitive theory. Some theories for that is Piaget, Bandura, and Colbert. I want to focus on Colbert more, per se, because he developed the stages of morality. I remember telling you guys the story, or the incident, previous class, about the man named Heinz, who stole a particular cure because he couldn't afford it, and he did it because he wanted to save his wife. Now, the focus of the stages of development is intellectual cognitive development through childhood and adulthood, and on the way in which their minds process and process in knowledge and affected by our environment. Some applications that we may use would a lot of social workers can use stages of development as a guide, so they can see where their particular client, what stage their particular client is in. If you have a client that comes in, and if you look at, the different theories and the different developmental stages that the theorists believe is to be true, you can use that as a guide to see where you are, or where your client is, and where you need to be with your client. And this can also help as far as intervention, as far as building a rapport, to understand ways to communicate. Because if your client is in stage 1 of Erickson, is in maybe stage 4 or 5 of Erickson, you can't, communicate with your client on a stage 6 or 7 because they haven't met that certain stage yet.